Her little illegal kitchen is over, my mother said into the microphone, and 32 people at my cousin's gender reveal stopped chewing at the same time. 3 days later, Mesa Code Enforcement was at my side gate with 6 complaints, 4 fake names, and enough paperwork to freeze my bakery bookings. I lost $4,860 in 11 days, and my parents kept feeding the city new lies while telling family I had done it to myself. Then a city employee I had never met walked into a room full of my relatives and read one phone number out loud, and my mother's attorney put his pen down. My name is Tiffany Morgan Hale. I'm 24 years old. Now let me take you back to Mesa, Arizona, on Saturday, April 13th, 2024. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing where you're all listening from. My cousin Raylan's gender reveal was in the backyard of a stucco house off East Brown Road. The kind with a built-in grill, fake turf, and citronella candles lined up like they could keep drama out if they tried hard enough. It was almost 6:30 in the evening. The air smelled like lighter fluid buttercream and the sweet chemical smoke from the powder cannons stacked by the fence for the reveal itself. I had done the dessert table as my gift: vanilla bean sugar cookies with tiny piped bows, lemon cupcakes, strawberry macarons, and a 2-tier white cake with a thin blush ribbon around the base. I charged clients $820 for that setup. For Raylan, I paid for it myself. I ran a small licensed cottage bakery called Copper Whisk Studio out of a converted garage behind the rental house I lived in near North Val Vista Drive. Not a fantasy bakery, not some little hobby page with 12 followers and a prayer. I had a Mesa business license, a Maricopa County food handler card, a cottage food registration, a city tax account, labels printed to code, and a booking calendar that stayed full enough for me to stop hostessing at a chain restaurant in January. My mother, Denise Hale, hated that the bakery worked. Not because it was dangerous, not because I had done anything wrong, because it worked. She liked me better when I was asking. She liked me better when I needed rides, couches, approval, and little folded 20s slipped across a kitchen counter with a lesson attached. Once I could pay my own rent and turn down her help, she started talking about me like I had become influenced. That was her word. Like confidence was a scam, somebody sold me online. My father, Ronald Hale, was quieter but worse in some ways. He let her go first, then he stood behind whatever she had just said as if that made it neutral. He worked 30 years as a facilities supervisor for a school district in Gilbert, and people trusted him because he looked like a man who labeled screws in the garage. He weaponized that face his whole life. At the gender reveal, I was cutting bars into neat little diamonds with a plastic bench scraper when my mother drifted beside the rental speaker. She had one of those matte pink lipsticks that made her look extra controlled. She asked Raylan for the microphone under the excuse of saying something light and loving before the powder. I remember the sticky feel of royal icing drying on my knuckles. I remember one fly circling the lemonade dispenser. I remember hearing the ice shift in a metal tub of canned sodas. Then my mother smiled at the crowd and said, "Her little illegal kitchen is over. Enjoy the sweets while you can, because Tiffany's little backyard business is getting shut down next." The room went quiet. Not all 32 people. A few still pretended to move, but most froze. I counted later from the photos and the guest list on Raylan's Evite because that is the kind of thing I do now. There were 32 people in that yard, including 2 of my regular clients, one realtor who had referred me twice, and my landlord's sister Paula, who happened to be standing by the charcuterie board. Raylan let out this tiny laugh that died almost immediately. Her husband Seth stared at the grass. My Aunt Colleen said Denise, in that warning tone families use when they want the damage to stop, but not enough to actually stop it. I looked up at my mother. She looked back at me over the microphone and added, "I do not enjoy seeing a young woman make choices that create public health concerns." Public health concerns. Like I was dumping bleach in a reservoir. Like the lemon curd tartlets on her friend's paper plate were a biohazard. I said you should give the mic back. That was all. She handed it to Raylan like she had just announced door prizes. Then she stepped away and took a sip of Sauvignon Blanc. If you have ever had that moment where you know everything is about to change and you can feel it physically, you know the feeling I mean. Not the panic kind, the cold administrative kind, the kind where your body starts opening file folders before your mind catches up. Stay with me, because what she said into that microphone was not improvising, it was a leak. The reveal powder went up blue 11 minutes later. People clapped. Phones came out. Somebody played My Girl through the speaker for reasons I still do not understand. I packed my platters, loaded my cake stands into the back of my white 2015 Honda Fit, and left before the first round of posed photos. At 7:52 that night, while I was at a red light on Gilbert Road, I opened the Notes app on my phone and typed exactly what my mother had said. Time, place, witnesses I could remember by name. That note is still in a folder called April. I got home to my rental on East Encanto Street at 8:14. My garage kitchen smelled faintly like vanilla extract and bleach because I had mopped before the party. I stood there in the fluorescent light, looking at my stainless prep table, and I had the weirdest thought. She already did something. I did not call her. I did not text my father. Instead, I photographed everything: my permit wall, my ingredient bins, my thermometer, my invoices, the hand wash sink, the labels on the cooling rack, the fire extinguisher mounted by the side door. I made a folder in Google Drive called Compliance and dropped every image into it before midnight. 3 days later, on Tuesday, April 16th at 9:17 in the morning, someone knocked hard on my side gate while I was boxing sugar cookies for a real estate open house in Chandler. I was wearing disposable gloves and one sock because I had stepped in a bit of dishwater and kicked the other one off. When I opened the gate, two people were standing there in city polos with clipboards and one white Ford Escape with a Mesa logo parked crooked at the curb. The woman introduced herself first. Elena Ruiz, code compliance technician. This is Martin Greeley. She smelled faintly like clean laundry and coffee. Martin smelled like sunblock. Elena held out a sheet. We received multiple complaints regarding an unpermitted commercial food operation, blocked alley access, grease disposal, rodent activity, and propane storage. I said, "This is a cottage bakery. I have my paperwork." Elena nodded once. "Then this will be quick if everything matches." Quick. It was not quick. They inspected the garage, the side yard, my trash bins, and the shared alley behind the fence. Martin took pictures of the side gate clearance with a little measuring wheel. Elena asked where I stored flour. She photographed the registration taped inside my ingredient cabinet. She was professional and almost kind, but not soft. She had a stack of 6 complaint printouts in her hand, and each one meant I was not baking while they checked. I asked if I had to stop production. She said, "Until I clear the storage issue and use category, yes, I need to verify the complaints." I looked at the half-boxed cookies on the prep table. I said, "I have pickups tonight." Elena said, "I understand, but right now I need you to stop." That is how fast it can happen. 11 words from a city employee at 9:24 on a Tuesday, and the week you built disappears. By 1:15 that afternoon, I had refunded 3 orders: $460 to a baby shower host in Ahwatukee, $290 to a dental office in Tempe, $180 to a woman named Brittany who had ordered teacher appreciation cookies for Friday. I ate half a sleeve of saltines for lunch and could not taste them. By Friday evening, after 2 more cancellations and 1 weekend event gone, my total lost revenue sat at $4,860. I know the exact number because I had a spreadsheet. That is the thing about people who think they can crush you through paperwork. They assume the person they are hurting will dissolve into emotion. Sometimes she just opens Excel. The complaints were strange in a very specific way. They were detailed enough to sound real, but wrong in ways only an outsider would write. One said I had 3 industrial propane canisters visible from the alley. I have never owned propane. Another claimed I dumped fryer grease into the storm drain on the southwest corner behind my fence. I did not own a fryer, and there was no southwest corner because the alley ran straight east to west, and my lot back to the center line. One complained that delivery vans blocked the school crossing route in front of my house every Saturday. I live on a dead-end residential stretch where the nearest elementary school is 1.8 miles away. Another said I had employees smoking beside a detached garage at 6:10 every morning. I did not have employees. At 6:10 every morning, I was usually alone with a podcast and a bowl scraper. Still, the city had to check, because that is what happens when someone uses institutions correctly enough to make them dangerous. That evening at 6:41, my father called. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered and put him on speaker while my phone recorded from a second device. I had started doing that after 2022 when my parents misremembered whole conversations in ways that somehow only benefited them. He said, "Your mother is upset that you left Saturday in such a way." I said, "Code enforcement came today," a pause. Then he said, "Well, if everything is proper, that should not concern you." That sentence told me more than anything else. Not what happened, not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Who reported you?" Just a preloaded answer waiting for a question. I said, "Did mom call them?" He inhaled through his nose. I could hear a TV in the background, some game show applause. People in your neighborhood notice things, Tiffany. Visibility invites scrutiny. Did she call them? I am not discussing your tone. I ended the call. At 7:12, my mother texted me, "I sincerely hope this experience teaches you the value of doing things properly." I took a screenshot, then another with the timestamp visible. Then I exported the full thread. If you have ever been gaslit by somebody who thinks calm wording makes a lie more respectable, you know how ugly that kind of message feels. It is not the shouting kind, the memo kind. The kind designed to look reasonable later. Keep listening because two people in my family had already seen enough by then to know what my parents were doing, and one of them was about to stay silent in a way I never forgot. By the next Monday, April 22nd, Elena Ruiz emailed me requesting copies of my city business license, state tax registration, ingredient sourcing records for shelf-stable items, and proof that I was operating under cottage food limitations and not as a retail kitchen. I sent everything by 11:26 that morning in a single PDF labeled exactly what it was. I also asked for copies of the complaints. She sent redacted versions the next day. There were 6 total, filed over 11 days. The first one came in on Friday, April 5th at 2:13 in the afternoon. The last came in on Monday, April 15th at 8:02 p.m., less than 48 hours after my mother's speech at the gender reveal. 4 came through the city's online form. 2 were called in, each used a different name. Nora K., J. Talbert, M. Ellison, concerned neighbor. They were lazy names made up by someone who thought systems never compare patterns. The language was not lazy, though. It was weirdly specific. One complaint mentioned a white hatchback that leaves before dawn for supply runs. That was my Honda Fit. Another described a beige side gate with metal latch. My gate was beige with a metal latch. One claimed the young woman is often not wearing hair covering during preparation. That implied somebody had seen inside the garage. Only family had. My parents had been to my house 3 times that year. Once in January to drop off a KitchenAid attachment I never asked for. Once in February when my father insisted on helping me move a rack I had already moved. Once in March, on Palm Sunday, when they stood in my driveway after church and did a slow visual inventory of everything I owned with polite expressions on their faces. There was one other person who had seen the inside often, my older sister, Lauren Mercer, 31, married, 2 boys. The designated peacemaker in a family that confused peacemaking with strategic silence. I called Lauren that Tuesday night at 8:33 while wiping powdered sugar off silicone mats. She answered on the 4th ring. I could hear a bath running in the background. I said, "Did Mom and Dad report me?" Silence for maybe 2 seconds. Then she said, "I think they were just worried somebody else would." That sentence landed harder than if she had lied. I sat on the stool by my prep table. The garage fan hummed above me and clicked at the end of each rotation because one blade was slightly bent. I remember staring at a cracked pistachio shell on the floor by my shoe. I said, "So you knew." Lauren lowered her voice. "Mom asked me in March if your setup was compliant. She said she only needed to know if she should help you before somebody from the city made it ugly." "Did you answer?" Another pause. "I said you bake out of the garage." I closed my eyes. That is how long it took them to erase me. One sentence from my sister passed to my mother as concern, turned into 6 complaints with fake names and a city inspection file. Lauren started crying then, quietly, like she wanted credit for feeling bad before I could be angry. She said I did not know she was going to do this. I said, "You knew enough." Then I hung up. I did not block her. I did not scream. Instead, I made a contact note under her name in my phone. April 23rd, 8:33 p.m., admitted Mom asked in March about compliance. Admitted she told Mom I bake out of the garage. Said she thought they were worried someone else would report me. Then I backed the note up. The city kept my file open through the end of April because of the propane claim and because one complaint alleged customer traffic causing commercial use beyond registration. Elena explained it to me on the phone in plain language on Friday, April 26th, at 10:04 in the morning while I sat in my car outside of Fry's grocery pickup. She said, "I think your food side is going to clear. The issue is these complaints are coming from multiple sources, and I have to make sure your property use stays within what the city allows." I said, "Can you tell if the reports came from the same person?" She went quiet, not in a suspicious way, more like somebody deciding what she is allowed to say. Then she said, "I can tell when submissions have similarities." That was all, but it was enough. So I got organized in a way my mother had never seen from me because she still thought of me as 19. Emotional, easy to corner. She had not met the version of me who could build a timeline out of receipts and make it hold. I made 6 folders. One was called Complaints. One was called Compliance. One was called Family. One was called Vehicle. One was called Revenue Loss. One was called Witnesses. In revenue loss, I put refunds, cancellation texts, Zella screenshots, and order forms, total $4,860. In family, I saved my mother's teach you the value of doing things properly text, my recorded call with my father, and screenshots from a group chat where my Aunt Colleen wrote, "I hope this bakery issue helps everyone reflect," followed by my mother replying with a prayer hands emoji and "truth has a way of surfacing." In witnesses, I wrote down everyone who heard my mother at the gender reveal. 32 attendees, 27 adults, 5 children. I listed names and what part of the yard they stood in if I could remember it. In vehicle, I started pulling Ring camera clips from my front porch. I had installed the camera in January after someone took 2 Amazon boxes and a set of floral hoops off my porch. What I found when I searched the timeline from April 5th through April 15th made my stomach go cold. My parents' silver 2018 Nissan Rogue appeared outside my house 4 separate times I had not known about. Friday, April 5th, at 1:49 p.m., parked across from my mailbox for 7 minutes. Sunday, April 7th, at 6:21 p.m., slowed beside my curb, then rolled to the alley and stopped for 3 minutes. Wednesday, April 10th, at 8:08 a.m., my father in the driver's seat, my mother looking toward the garage. Monday, April 15th, at 7:44 p.m., the night before the city came. Same car, same curb. I clipped the footage and exported it. Then I compared the complaint times with the car sightings. The first complaint had come at 2:13 p.m. on April 5th. Their Rogue was outside my house at 1:49. The last call and complaint came in on April 15th at 8:02 p.m. Their Rogue had been on my street at 7:44. Was it enough on its own? No. Was it a pattern? Absolutely. Now let me take you back to Wednesday, May 1st, at 11:18 in the morning, because that was the day my mother decided to overplay it. I was in line at a UPS store in Gilbert sending a package of cookie favors to a client in Flagstaff when my landlord, Marcus Yates, called. Marcus was 61, divorced, son damaged in the Phoenix Way, and usually hard to rattle. He owned 3 rentals on my street and fixed things himself with the same red-handled tool bag no matter the job. He said, "Tiffany, did you ask for the city to inspect the alley drainage behind the property?" I said no. He said, "Some woman called me this morning saying my tenant is operating a non-compliant food business and I should be worried about my liability exposure." Nobody in real life says liability exposure unless they heard it from my mother. Marcus said he had gotten a voicemail from a blocked number at 8:36 a.m. The caller did not leave a name. Female voice, controlled, saying she was concerned for the owner and that the city already has an open file. I asked if he could send it to me. He said, "I can play it for you now." So I stepped out of line and stood beside a rack of cardboard mailers while he held his phone up. The recording was muffled but recognizable in the terrible way voices are when you know them too well. The round edges of the vowels, the little lift on the word owner. The way she pronounced concerned, like she was trying not to sound excited. My own mother, trying to get me thrown out of my rental through a blocked voicemail. I said, "Can you text me after? I need a copy." He said, "I was going to ask if you wanted that." Marcus became important after that, not because he saved me emotionally, because he stayed factual. Some people are a gift that way. If you have ever had somebody come after your housing or your work at the same time, you know why I nearly threw up in that UPS parking lot. They were not just trying to embarrass me, they were trying to collapse the floor under me from two sides. Before I tell you what Marcus sent me, please take a second to like and subscribe if this story is hitting something real for you. And keep listening, because the voicemail led me to the one detail my mother forgot to hide. Marcus sent the voicemail at 12:07 p.m. I downloaded it, cleaned up the audio as much as I could with a free software trial, and saved 3 versions. Then I listened with headphones. At second 11, she said, "You may want to check whether she has disclosed the business use on the lease. Not my lease, the lease. Because my mother had never read my lease and did not know I had. I had disclosed it to Marcus in December before I signed. We had a one-page addendum that said limited cottage food operation, no customer seating, no exterior signage, no employees on site, no commercial exhaust. Signed by both of us. I scanned that too. At second 19, she said, the address is 1178 East Encanto. She forgot the street. She forgot because she was reading from memory, not from a public record. At 1:12 that afternoon, I emailed Elena Ruiz and asked if she was allowed to tell me whether complaint phone numbers are stored with the file, even if names are redacted. I kept it simple. No accusations, no family context, just facts. She replied at 3:56. I can speak by phone tomorrow morning. That night, my father texted me. Your mother tells me you have become accusatory with Lauren. This is not healthy. I screenshot that too. Thursday, May 2nd, 10:01 a.m. Elena called while I was in the baking aisle at Walmart buying parchment. I left my cart beside boxed cake mixes and stepped outside. She said, I want to be careful here. I cannot release personal complainant information casually, but because false reporting to the city has its own consequences, I can tell you this. The 6 complaints in your file do not appear to come from 6 independent sources. I leaned against the brick wall by the cart return. She went on, 4 of the online submissions came from the same IP range, and the 2 phone complaints came from the same number. I said nothing for a second because my mouth had gone dry. Then I asked, can that be documented? She said, if I elevate the file for false complaint review, yes. I remember the heat on the back of my neck, the smell of hot asphalt and fryer oil drifting from a nearby fast food place, a grocery cart rattling across the lot. I said, please do that. She asked me to email anything I had suggesting harassment connected to the complaints. Not feelings, not theories, records. So I sent her a clean package. My mother's text from April 16th. The voicemail to Marcus, the ring clips showing the rogue outside my house on dates matching complaint activity. The lease addendum. The gender reveal witness list with Raylan and Paula marked as people who heard the shutdown next line. My father's recorded call. Lauren's phone note was the only thing I did not send, because I had no recording and I was not going to overreach. I named the email for file review, timeline, and related records. She replied at 11:39 with one sentence. Received, thank you. That was enough. The next 2 weeks were ugly in the dull family way. Not screaming, reframing. My Aunt Colleen called me on Sunday, May 5th, at 4:15 while I was icing graduation cookies shaped like little caps. She said, your mother is worried you are trying to punish her for caring how things look. I said, I'm not punishing anyone. I am answering what was done. Colleen sighed into the phone. Families should not make city matters into moral theaters. That line was so absurd I almost laughed. I said, she made a city matter out of my business. Silence. Then Colleen said softer. I know. She had known at the party. She had heard the line. She had still chosen comfort over truth for 3 weeks. Another small betrayal. Not the deepest one, but enough to count. On Tuesday, May 7th at 7:20 p.m., Lauren showed up at my house unannounced with a Trader Joe's bag and those guilty eyes people bring when they want a version of forgiveness they have not earned. I did not invite her in. We stood on the porch under the yellow bug light while my neighbor's sprinkler hit the sidewalk in soft ticks. She said, Mom used my name when she called one of the complaints in. I felt my whole body go still. Lauren twisted the paper handles of the bag until one tore. She said if anyone checked, I should say I was worried about traffic and sanitation. I did not make the call. I am telling you because she thinks none of this can be traced. I said, why now? She looked past me into the garage where sheet pans were drying on a rack. Because she said if your file gets worse, maybe it will stop you from being so arrogant. There are sentences that divide a life into before and after. That was one of them for me. Not because it was the cruelest thing my mother had ever thought, because Lauren finally said it out loud. I asked, "Will you say that to anyone else?" Lauren swallowed. "If I have to," I said, "that is not enough." Then I took the Trader Joe's bag from her hand, set it on the porch, and said, "Go home." Inside the bag was soup, flowers, and a card with nothing written in it. I threw the flowers away and kept the card because blank things tell the truth. I had been keeping that folder for 33 days by then. On Friday, May 10th, Elena emailed to say my property use review was complete, and my bakery was cleared to continue operating under my existing registration and lease addendum. She attached a compliance closeout letter with a date, a file number, and the sentence I had needed for almost a month. "No verified code violation found," I cried then. Not loud, not movie crying, just two stupid relieved tears into a tub of sanding sugar while the convection fan whirred behind me. But that was only half of it, because being cleared is not the same as being restored. I had lost clients, I had lost Mother's Day orders, I had spent 36 days waking up to email with my stomach already tight. I had a cleared file and $4,860 gone. Then, on Monday, May 13th, Elena called again. She said, "I need to ask whether you would be willing to attend a compliance mediation meeting with your landlord present. It is not about your operation anymore. It is about the false complaint review and associated costs." "Associated costs," I said. "Will my parents be there?" She said. "The named residents connected to the reporting pattern have been invited to respond." Named residents, not accused, not dramatic. Bureaucracy can be beautiful when it finally points the right direction. The meeting was set for Thursday, May 16th at 2 p.m. at the Mesa Municipal Building on North Center Street. Elena said I did not need a lawyer, though I could bring one if I wanted. I asked a family friend, Mara Singh, to come with me anyway. Mara was not my lawyer. She was a contracts manager for a solar company and the kind of woman who says, "Print 2 copies before you even know you need one." Now let me take you back to that Thursday afternoon, because if you have ever spent weeks being painted as unstable, difficult, or dramatic, you know there is something almost spiritual about walking into a government building with a labeled binder and the truth on your side. The municipal building smelled like toner, old air conditioning, and somebody's microwaved soup from a break room I never saw. The carpet was gray-blue and made every footstep sound softer than it was. Mara met me in the lobby at 1:38 wearing a navy sheath dress and carrying a legal pad she did not actually need. She hugged me once and said, "You do not have to perform, just answer what is asked." My parents arrived at 1:49. My mother wore a cream blouse and pearl studs. My father wore the same brown loafers he had worn to every school awards night of my childhood. With them was a local attorney named Brett Halverson, a broad-shouldered man with a salmon tie, and the expression of somebody who had been told this was a misunderstanding among decent people. Lauren came too, alone. She looked pale and underdressed in a black cardigan. My Aunt Colleen was there as well because apparently my mother could not face consequences without an audience sympathetic to her discomfort. We were taken into a conference room at 157, long laminate table, 8 chairs, one box of tissues nobody touched, a humming vent overhead. Through the glass panel in the door I could see passing city employees carrying binders and coffee. Elena Ruiz came in at exactly 2 o'clock with a man named Terrence Cobb from Neighborhood Services and a thin file folder. She did not look at anyone like this was family drama. She looked at the table like it was a table that helped more than she will ever know. Terrence began by saying, "This was a review of complaint activity tied to property file NC241679 and related follow-up costs. Plain voice, no emotion." He asked everyone to state their names for the record. My mother said Denise Hale. Smooth, as if she were checking in for a dental cleaning. Terrence explained that the property had been cleared with no verified violation and that the city had concerns regarding repeated complaints from sources that were not independent as represented. Brett Halverson leaned forward and said, "My clients understand there may have been confusion among neighbors." Elena opened her folder. She said that does not appear to be the case. The room got very still. If you have ever wanted vindication so badly that you worried it would not feel real when it came, I want you to hear this part carefully. Real vindication is usually not cinematic. It is somebody neutral reading one sentence in the same tone they would use to confirm a water bill, and somehow that is even better. Stay with me. Elena set 6 printed sheets on the table. One in front of Terrence, one in front of Brett, one in front of Mara. She kept the rest. Then she said 4 online complaints were submitted from the same residential IP address associated with 2943 East Portola Valley Drive, Gilbert, Arizona. That was my parents' house. No gasp, no shouting. Just silence so complete I could hear the vent tick. Brett looked at Denise, then at Ronald. My mother said, that proves only that somebody in the home used the internet. Elena nodded once as if the sentence had been expected and not especially interesting. Then she said, the 2 phone complaints were both placed from a mobile number ending 6418. That number is listed on recent voicemail contact to the property owner of 1178 East Encanto Street. Marcus had given the city the voicemail. Elena continued. That same voice references an open city file before the final complaint was logged and identifies the address incompletely but accurately enough to indicate personal familiarity. My father moved his hand off the table. Small thing? But I noticed. Brett cleared his throat. Again, that does not establish malicious intent. People can be sincerely mistaken. Terrence turned one page. He said the city also notes that multiple complaint claims were factually impossible, including fryer grease disposal where no fryer existed, blocked school route where no school route exists, and commercial propane storage unsupported by inspection or permit category. Then Elena said the sentence I had waited 33 days to hear from someone outside my family. Based on the records, this appears to be coordinated false reporting. My mother's mouth parted, then closed. Lauren stared at the table. Terrence asked if the reporting parties wished to correct or explain anything for the file. Brett looked at my parents. He did that tiny lawyer lean toward a client that says, decide now. My mother said, we were trying to protect the neighborhood. Not we were mistaken. Not I'm sorry, protect. Elena reached into the folder again. There is one more item, she said. She played the voicemail from the blocked number to Marcus on a small conference speaker. My mother's own voice filled the room, thin and metallic, but unmistakable. You may want to check whether she has disclosed the business use on the lease. Halfway through the recording, Brett stopped writing. When it ended, nobody spoke for 4 full seconds. Then Lauren did the one useful thing she had done in a month. She said, very quietly, Mom used my name when she talked about reporting her. My mother turned to her so fast her pearl earring caught the light. Lauren, just that. One word, broken at the end. Lauren kept looking at the table. You asked me in March if Tiffany baked out of the garage. You said you needed to know whether to call? My father said, this is not helping. Terrence said, actually it is clarifying. That line still lives in my head rent-free. No one asked me for a speech. Thank God I did not want one. Terrence reviewed the city's next steps. Because the complaints triggered repeated inspections and staff time on a file with no verified violation, the city would assess false complaint recovery fees of $1,940 against the reporting parties tied to the address and phone records. Separate from that, the property owner's documented administrative cost concerns would be noted for civil recovery if pursued privately. Marcus had already submitted a statement that he spent 6 hours dealing with the matter. He later billed my parents $720 through small claims and won by default when they did not appear. The city also placed an internal flag on future complaints from the same address and number for enhanced verification review. In plain English, my parents had burned their own credibility with the one institution they thought would hurt me for them. That was the concrete price from the city, $1,940. In writing due within 30 days, it was not all. Because Brett Halverson, whose entire posture had changed by then, asked for a 5-minute recess. Outside in the hallway, with the door not fully shut, my mother hissed something I could not catch. Brett answered in a low voice I could hear clearly enough. If there are more records, I cannot keep describing this as concern. He left 15 minutes later. Not forever from life, obviously, but from them. He came back only long enough to say he would not be handling any dispute against the property owner or the daughter related to this matter. Then he handed Ronald a slim folder and walked out. My father looked older in that exact second than I had ever seen him. The room did not clap. Nobody told me justice had been served. Elena just gathered her papers and said the closeout letter and fee notice would be mailed by Friday. That was how it ended in the room. The part after that was quieter and in some ways meaner. By Monday, May 20th, my parents were telling relatives a familiar new version. Denise had only raised concerns. Ronald had only stood by his wife. Lauren had been confused in a pressured setting. I know this because my cousin Nate sent me screenshots from a family group chat called Sunday Supper, where my mother wrote, "It is tragic when entrepreneurial young people reject accountability and turn normal questions into persecution." I saved those too. There is no point winning if you do not preserve the revision attempt that follows. The city fee notice arrived at my parents' house on Friday, May 17th, according to Lauren, who called me from the Target parking lot on Baseline Road at 5:27 p.m. She said Mom opened it at the kitchen island and read it twice. The amount was $1,940 due June 17th. Lauren said my father asked whether non-payment would escalate visibility, which is such a Ronald phrase that I nearly smiled. It did escalate visibility, just not in the way he meant. My father had planned to retire from the school district at the end of June. Not fired, not disgraced, just a very image-managed retirement with a luncheon, a plaque, and one of those giant cards passed around the maintenance office. He had spent months talking about it like a coronation. Then the district put him on administrative review on May 28th. Not because the city called his job and tattled. Life is usually less direct than that. It happened because he used his school district email on April 12th at 7:14 a.m. to send my mother a link to the city complaint portal from his work account with the subject line, "Use this one. Names do not seem verified." She had forwarded it to herself. Then, during the panic after the city fee notice, she sent the chain to Brett by mistake without removing the header. Brett, to his credit, did not bury it. He forwarded it back with a withdrawal note and copied Ronald. Ronald printed it at work. The district logs captured the print job because of course they did. A month before retirement, he was answering questions about using a public employer account to help coordinate false civic complaints against his own daughter. That part did not explode publicly. It just closed around him. On June 12th, he accepted an early separation agreement instead of the retirement event he wanted. No luncheon, no speech, no maintenance wing plaque with his years engraved. He lost the district's small retirement consulting contract too, the one worth $12,000 over the next year helping train new facilities managers. A concrete price, measurable, very him. My mother paid the city fee in 2 installments according to Lauren. $970 on June 14th and $970 on June 17th. The payment receipt listed false complaint recovery. I got a copy later through a records request because by then I was done feeling guilty about wanting the document. I also did one thing people ask me about when they hear this story. Did I try to recover my lost $4,860 from them? Yes. Not with a dramatic lawsuit montage, not with TV speeches. I mailed a demand letter on June 3rd by certified mail with copies of refund screenshots, canceled invoices, and the closeout letter. Mara helped me write it in plain language. "You made false reports. They froze my business. Here's what it cost me. Pay me within 14 days. My parents did not pay within 14 days. So Marcus filed his small claims case for the $720 they cost him, and I filed mine for the maximum I could document cleanly without padding anything. Maricopa County Justice Court filing fee from my debit card. Court date set for August 8th at 1:30. They offered me $2,000 the week before the hearing if I would sign something saying the matter was resolved with no admission of wrongdoing. I said no. I want to be very clear here for anyone listening who has ever been told to be reasonable right when the truth is finally expensive for the person who hurt you. Reasonable does not mean cheap. Reasonable does not mean helping someone preserve the lie that almost broke your life. Sometimes reasonable means showing up with receipts and letting a judge do math. At the hearing, my parents looked stunned that the world had not rearranged itself around their intentions. The commissioner, Linda Carvajal, was brisk and unimpressed in the best possible way. She looked at my binder, their city fee notice, the voicemail transcript, the closeout letter, the refund log, and the complaint timeline. She asked my father whether he disputed that the city had classified the reporting as coordinated false complaints tied to their address and phone records. He said, "We believed we were acting appropriately," she said. "That was not my question." I nearly laughed. I did not, but nearly. She awarded me $3,500 plus filing costs. Not the full $4,860. because the court limited part of the future order loss as too speculative. And honestly, that was fair. I cared less about squeezing every dollar than about the record saying I had been harmed by what they did. So by August, my parents had paid $1,940 to the city, owed me $3,500 plus costs, and lost $720 to Marcus. Ronald had lost his retirement luncheon and a $12,000 consulting contract. Denise had lost something less official, but almost as important to her, access. Raylan stopped inviting her to baby events after the gender reveal clip started circulating inside the family. Not online. We are not that kind of family, but in text threads. Quietly. The audio from the microphone existed because Seth had hired a videographer who captured the speech by accident while testing levels before the reveal. When Raylan finally watched it back in June, she heard the exact line, the exact tone, and the little laugh from someone near the drinks table after my mother said public health concerns. Raylan called me the next day and said, "I should have said something in the moment." I said, "Yes," she cried. I did not comfort her much. Some apologies are real and still late. Then she did something useful. She stopped giving my mother the social stage she loved. No baby shower planning committee. No hospital visitor first list. No come help me fold onesies afternoons. Denise was not banned from the family. Families like mine rarely work that cleanly. But she was downgraded, peripheral, which, for a woman who lived on centrality, was its own punishment. There is one more person I need to talk about, because every story like this has somebody who stayed silent too long and then expects the truth to function like an apology. Lauren came over on Sunday, August 11th at 3:10 in the afternoon, 3 days after the small claims hearing. The monsoon had rolled through the night before, and the yard still smelled like wet dust and creosote. She brought nothing this time. No soup, no flowers. Smart. I let her sit at my patio table because the house felt too intimate. The umbrella above us clicked in the breeze, and one of the neighborhood kids was bouncing a basketball somewhere down the block. She said I was wrong. I said yes. Then she said I was taught to smooth things over before I was taught to tell the truth. That was probably the most honest sentence she had said to me in years. I looked at my hands around an iced coffee sweating onto the table. There was powdered sugar under one thumbnail from that morning's order, because bakery glitter never fully leaves you. I said that explains you, it does not fix what you did. She nodded. No defense. Finally, she told me she had started seeing a therapist in July after having panic attacks every time my mother called. She had muted Mom's texts, she had not cut contact, but she had stopped being useful. In our family, that counts as a revolution. Then she asked if I thought things could ever be normal again. I said no, not cruelly, just accurately. Because this is the part people do not always say out loud when they tell a revenge story. Winning does not restore innocence. It does not put trust back where trust used to be. It just stops the bleeding and labels the wound correctly. I still bake more, actually. In September, I moved part of Copper Whisk Studio into a shared commercial kitchen in Tempe 3 mornings a week, not because the city forced me to, because I wanted growth on my own terms. I still use my garage for cottage-compliant work, and I keep every permit in a binder by the door inside, clear plastic sleeves like a woman who has seen what paperwork can do in the wrong hands. My best month that fall was October. $7,430 gross, corporate cookie trays for 2 realty offices, 76 wedding favors for a venue in Queen Creek, and a Halloween pre-sale that sold out in 18 hours. I hired a part-time assistant named Jessa for packaging on Fridays. She wears a hairnet without being told and labels things straighter than I do. I adore her. My parents have not been inside my house since Palm Sunday of that year. My mother sent me a birthday text in November that said, "I hope this year brings mutual healing and perspective." I did not answer. My father mailed a card with no note, just his name. I filed both with the others. I know some people listening want to hear that there was a Christmas scene, a dramatic reconciliation, a tearful door opening. There was not. What there was a baby shower in January of this year for Raylan's second son. 41 guests at a private room in a brunch place in Scottsdale. I did the dessert table again, this time paid in full invoice number. CWS 2501 Mini cinnamon roll cookies, lemon petite fours, and a 2-tier cake with hand-piped clouds. My mother came in wearing winter white and saw my business cards displayed in a gold holder beside the cake. Real cards, my updated logo, my new commercial kitchen address on the back. She stood there for a second too long. Halfway through brunch, one of Raylan's friends asked how business was going, and before I could answer, the venue coordinator, a woman named Celeste, cut in while setting down coffee. "Oh, Tiffany's wonderful," she said. "She is one of our preferred dessert vendors now." Preferred vendor. My mother looked at her cup. That was all. No scene, no correction. Just the smallest visible collapse of a story she had tried to write about me and could no longer maintain. Later, when guests were leaving, Paula, my landlord's sister, squeezed my arm and said, "I heard about the city fee. Good. Good. Not elegant. Not healing. Accurate. If you're listening to this while documenting your own mess, let me tell you what mattered. Not my anger. I had plenty of that, but anger alone is not searchable. Records are searchable. What mattered was the timestamp on my mother's text. The ring clips with the silver rogue, the voicemail to Marcus, the lease addendum, the cancellation log totaling $4,860, the witness list from the gender reveal, the city worker Elena Ruiz who did her job carefully enough to see the pattern and plain enough to name it. I think about her more than she probably knows. Not because she saved me, she did not. I saved me. But she was the outsider who said the true thing in the right room, and sometimes that is the difference between surviving a lie and being buried under it. There is a screenshot line in my notes app from that first night at the red light on Gilbert Road. I read it sometimes when I start doubting my memory. It says, "She said shut down next because she already started. She had, and I finished it." The last concrete update I will give you is this. On February 3rd, my parents made the final payment on the judgment, $3,500 plus $227 in costs. I know the exact amount because the clerk stamped the satisfaction on February 7th at 9:14 in the morning, and I ordered a certified copy for my records. Ronald never got his retirement luncheon back. Denise still gets invited to family events sometimes, but never to plan them, host them, or control a microphone. I wish I could tell you that winning made me peaceful. It made me clear. There is a difference. I do not forgive people just because a receipt exists. I do not confuse consequences with character growth. My parents did not become safe because a city employee caught them lying. They just became easier to identify. So no, we are not healed. We are documented, and for now that